Now that I've already given my overall perspective based on 25 years of extensive research and analysis, now that I've already told you a little bit more about my special teaching tool that uses knowledge in a way that's never been seen before, now that I've given the definitive answer to 3 of the most important questions that we face as a species, let's take a much closer look at the definitive answer to 3 of the most important questions that we face as a species. But first, I'd like to give the definitive answer to 2 preliminary questions to the first question. And I'm also going to give the definitive answer to a follow-up question for the second question. So I'm going to give the definitive answer to 6 questions. 3 are the most important questions that we face as a species. But the very first question is extremely important because it's important that we're on the same page. So the first question is, what are problems? Well, problems are negative effects. Problems are in the 3rd stage of knowledge, on the wrong path, or in the 3rd stage of knowledge in Plato's cave. And I've already showed you what the cause and effect and pleasure and pain quadrant system looks like. I've also showed you my 6-box system where there are 3 stages of knowledge on the right path that start with knowledge, and we make good applications, and we end up in paradise, a place where we don't have any problems that are within our control. We have unlimited potential. And then we have 3 stages of knowledge on the wrong path, or in Plato's cave, where we start off with false knowledge in the 1st stage. We make mistakes, bad applications in the 2nd stage, and then we manifest hundreds of thousands of problems that are 100% within our control. So all of our problems are in the 3rd stage of knowledge on the wrong path, or they are negative effects. Now, when we look at our negative effects, those effects are either 100% within our control, based on the things we do, our lifestyle choices, or they are not 100% within our control, based on things done to us, like accidents and acts of nature where we have no control whatsoever, or acts of war, crime, and violence where we have limited control. And these piece numbers can be represented as 103 and 104 in my special 6-box system, the ultimate solution, or the ultimate schematic. Piece 103 ties back into pieces 81 to 99. But remember, I told you earlier that I hid 57 pieces altogether. Here are 19 of them. I wanted to hide, and let's just call it 103. If it's within our control, we don't want to focus on the effect. This is one where we're being tricked, you see? What happens when we go to our so-called experts? They name the 103s. Don't name the 103s unless they're life-threatening, because they all tie back to 81 to 95. And what we want to do is we want to name our problems based on what we're doing if they're within our control. Sure, if you have a 104 based on the 100, where you have something done to you, yes, you can't prevent that with a thought and an action. You have to treat the symptom. And that's what our current system is good for, treating symptoms. But not if it's lifestyle related. We're the only ones who can solve those problems. So, question number 1, what are problems? Problems are negative effects. They are in the 3rd stage of knowledge on the wrong path, represented as pieces 103 and 104. We're going to focus on 103 because they're within our control. They have to do with our lifestyle choices. Now, we can sit here and argue till the cows come home about what those lifestyle choices are, but that's not what we're going to do right now. The purpose of this information is to help us see the invalid structures in all the systems that are in charge. And that if we just use valid structure, we know that we don't get a negative C unless we get a negative B. Now, there's 2 ways to have a negative B. There's 2 ways that make a mistake. We cannot be willing to apply what we know, which is not our case because most of us don't know this. Or we can be willing to apply what the same mistakes that were taught to us and that our parents taught to us and that was taught to them. Remember, these mistakes tie back into our traditions. And we've been making the very first mistake, which is the fall of mankind, for 3,000 generations. Now, we got to stop this cycle. And so now we got the definitive answer to the very first question, our preliminary question, and the first of the 6 questions, and that is, what are problems? Well, now that we know what problems are, let's take a look at the second question. Second question is, do problems serve a purpose? Well, of course they serve a purpose. Remember, there are 3 stages of knowledge, where knowledge is acquired in the 1st stage, applied in the 2nd stage, manifested in the 3rd stage. Thoughts, actions, reactions, beliefs, causes, effects, belief system, lifestyle choices, feedback system. Feedback system, yes. Yes, our problems serve a purpose. They're part of the effects. They're supposed to tell us, are you on the right path or are you on the wrong path? Are you satisfying your needs? If you're not satisfying your needs, you're going to end up there. So we can argue till the cows come home as far as what are the specifics to those lifestyle choices, but not now. All I want you to understand is it's not difficult to solve our problems once we figure out how to satisfy those needs. The problem is we're sick and the information isn't getting out there, but enough of us are doing this to be an example for everyone else. Just look around at people who know what to do, or look at someone who's deathly ill and they do what we're talking about. Do the first of my 3-step process and you will have a brand new reference so fast that you'll finally be able to challenge all those old references. That's the problem with false knowledge. We have way too many references that support our current belief system and our current way of life. And there's no way to challenge those, so I'm not going to look at the details, the specifics. Remember, we don't look for specifics first. You always make things simple. You start with the structure. You exclude the impossible like Sherlock Holmes would do. Once you find an invalid structure, you throw the whole thing out. Remember, there are 2 criteria for logic. The structure must be valid, and the content must not have any logical fallacies. Well, don't go looking for logical fallacies in a system that might already have an invalid structure. It's real simple to figure out if the structure is invalid. A little child can tell when we're going the wrong way. Remember, the contents is the train. The structure is the tracks. It's one way, just like my 6-box system, the 3 stages of knowledge. And if I was to tell you, okay, I want you to build a bridge a one-way bridge from California to Florida. And now it's going to take a lot of knowledge and intellect to be able to find a logical fallacy in the blueprints. You got to know a lot to be able to find the flaws in the blueprints. But every 7-year-old child will go, wait a minute, Daddy. Why is the bridge being built from Florida to California? It's a one-way bridge, remember? It's so easy to be tricked and fooled. And again, the purpose of my system is not to prove the specifics or the contents or the details. Everyone's going to want to argue about that, so just test an idea as time has come. And there's 5 main mistakes we're making. Do the best you can at correcting all of them. And good luck. You know, people think, well, you got to be perfect. No, you got to do the best you can. And the more people who do it, that's the key. That's why you have to understand what this is all about. The more people who actually do this, the easier it is for all the rest of us to do it. That's why if we can reach the tipping point, things will change so fast. We'll look back in 10 years in disbelief and horror at what we're doing and how we couldn't figure it out. It's going to blow us away. There's a very simple solution to solve our problems. So, number 1, preliminary question, what are problems or negative effects? 3rd stage of knowledge, on the wrong path. Number 2, do they serve a purpose? Yes, they're trying to tell us something. They're warning us that something is wrong. Now, the 3rd question would be the very first initial question. Why do we have so many problems? Well, the reason why we have so many problems has to do with the law of cause and effect, and can be traced back to 11 main events. And these can be represented as piece numbers. Well, first of all, cause and effect is represented as the 2nd and 3rd stage of knowledge, and then the 11 main events would be pieces 9A, 36 to 40, and 95 to 99. So this is how we got where we are. Somehow or the other, we didn't satisfy our needs. We made a mistake. That's the fall of mankind. It isn't just an act of disobedience. What does that tell us? It doesn't tell us anything. We did something wrong. What was it? Well, we altered one of our needs. We took something we mastered. In fact, if you want to make this really simple, let me give you a parable. Let's say I'm God, and I have a garden for my children, and I said, my children, I want you to stay in the garden. All you have to do is understand one law. There's going to be 2 trees in that garden. You have to nurture one tree, and you got to make sure you don't apply the other tree to the other tree. So if you apply the tree of knowledge to the trees of life, you alter that tree, and then it alters us, and that's how we get problems. That's how you get kicked out of the garden. One law. Nurture the trees of life. Do not apply what you learn to what you need. You alter the need, it alters us. That's how we got kicked out of the garden. We did something wrong. So there are 5 main things we mastered. How did that happen? Well, piece 9A happens to be our neocortex. About 2 million years ago, our brains nearly doubled in size, going from just under 400 cc's to almost 800 cc's. And of course, it kept growing up to a point until we started making mistakes. Now we're devolving. We're getting smaller. We're not as robust. We're not as healthy. And we weren't savages back then. The savages are the ones that are civilized, oddly enough, because cities and civilizations just make things worse. But we have to understand, on the grand scheme of things, where did that happen? Well, if we put the human existence on a football field, where there's 100 yards and 3 feet and 12 inches, we became civilized on the 3-inch line. And that was all because of the 3rd mistake we made on the 6-inch line. That's the Industrial Revolution. That's when we started eating plants that we weren't biologically adapted to eat. And there's plenty of research that proves our brains started getting smaller when we started making this mistake. But don't think that's the big one, because the 2nd mistake is worse than the 3rd, and the 1st is worse than all of them. And in other words, by the time we made the 3rd mistake, we already had 2 mistakes under our belt. So if we put the human existence on a football field, the third mistake we made was on the 6-inch line. That'd be about 10,000 years ago. Remember, there's 5 main mistakes we made. The very first mistake happened on the 1-yard line. That's when we took the very first thing we mastered and applied it to one of our needs. The second mistake happened on the 2.5-foot line. That's when we mastered animals and started eating animals that were not biologically adapted to eat. The first mistake created a condition called hypoheliosis and hyperclonic tension, and those two are two huge contributing factors to the dark side of our behavior. The second mistake we made darkened the dark side of our behavior, which is evidence throughout history. All philosophers and historians noticed that grain-eating cultures surpassed every other culture that ate meat in every area except 2, in their warlike tendencies and their obsession with sex. So those are the first 3 mistakes. The fourth mistake happened on the about 10 generations ago or so, something like the 1/14 inch line, and that's the Industrial Revolution, and that's when we mastered machines and we started processing food. The 5th mistake happened when the Chemical Revolution came along, and we applied that to one of our needs, and that's getting real close to almost 8 generations ago, about the 1/28 inch of an inch line or so. So those are the 5 main mistakes we're making. They're causing most of our problems. So the reason why we have so many problems is because we're making mistakes. The follow-up question to question number 3, which was my first question initially, is, well, why are we making mistakes? And the reason is because of ignorance. We don't know we're making mistakes. Most of us are doing things that we think are okay, but they're not okay. They are wrong. They're a mistake. They're the reason why we have so many problems. So those would be the first three questions. Now we got to ask ourselves once again, well, why are we ignorant? That's the follow-up question. The follow-up question to question number 3, so the 4th question would be, why are we ignorant? Why don't we know any better? Well, there are 19 reasons why we don't know. There are 12 sources of false knowledge and 7 wellness factors, and I'm not going to go into those right now. I'll save that for another story. I'm going to tell this story more than once, and I'm going to add on to it each time. It's a form of pile driving. I hope everyone can appreciate it. There's a lot of information I could flood all at once, but I'm not going to overwhelm you too much at once. So we're going to make it simple right now. If you want to stay in the garden, if you don't want to get kicked out and have problems, don't satisfy your needs. Now, what are those needs? We're not going to talk about that now. That's not open for debate at this point. But if you test an idea as time has come, you're going to have a brand new reference and you're going to be thinking about everything totally differently. Now let's take a look at the very last question. How do we solve our problems? All we have to do to solve every problem that is 100% within our control is to satisfy 2 groups of needs, and those are based on the law of cause and effect, where we have to satisfy 12 essential needs, thereby removing primary cause, and it's based on the ripple effect, where we have to satisfy 2 additional temporary needs, thereby dealing with subsequent causes and subsequent needs. So once again, all we have to do to solve every problem that is 100% within control is to satisfy 2 groups of needs. Unfortunately, most of us are not willing and able to do that, which is why I added 2 preliminary steps to the only thing we have to do, thereby perfecting a 3-step process. I've told you this before. The first step addresses the willingness issue on a temporary basis so we can see what we're missing and then be in a better position to take the second step, where we want to correct these 5 main mistakes on a permanent basis. And then once we add these 5 main mistakes onto our list of mistakes to correct, we'll finally be in a position to satisfy all 2 groups of needs, and then we'll have a better understanding of, well, really, what are those needs? So I cannot prove the specifics, and I am not trying to. I've only created a special teaching tool to prove the structure, and then I have perfected a 3-step process so that you can prove the specifics. You find out how you got to tweak this protocol. Remember, the science is easy. In most cases, that's all we have to do. And remember, the science has to do with the law of cause and effect and our anatomy. The art has to do with the ripple effect and the damage we've done to our anatomy, or to ourselves, society, and our environment. And the point here is we can't change everything overnight. So the art of solving problems is very tricky. No one has enough wisdom and knowledge to be able to know how to apply the art in every case. That's why we have to take an active role when it comes to the art. You know your body better than anyone else. Pay attention, keep track of it. It's not that complicated. Once you learn some basics, that disease is not an entity that's attacking us, it's just a bodily process. And once you understand that process, you'll be able to identify almost all your diseases and go, okay, don't work downstream unless I have to. Let's go upstream and figure out what we're doing. And the tricky part about knowing what to do is the fact that we're in Plato's cave. And what a lot of people don't understand is that there are many levels to Plato's cave. And the first level most people find is the very first level, and that's when we realize, oh my God, look what's going on. There are some sick psychopaths controlling the masses. They're the reason why we have war, crime, and violence, and disease, and everything else. They're keeping knowledge suppressed. So you've gone up one level in Plato's cave, but you're not out of Plato's cave yet. You still have further to go. It's like you've identified there's a fox guarding a hen house, and you're going around screaming to everybody, hey, there's a fox guarding a hen house. That's what we have with people like Alex Jones. Oh, there's a fox guarding a hen house. Let's tell everybody about the fox. Yeah, it's nice to go up a level, but not to sit down and focus on them. That's how we get tricked and distracted. We got to keep getting out of the cave. We got to figure out why are we in the cave. It's simple. The very first mistake we made destroyed a nutrient that feeds one of our senses. Now we lost one of our senses. No wonder we prey upon ourselves. No wonder we compete for resources on an abundant planet. We're disconnected. So that's the most exciting thing about doing the first of my three-step process. It will bump up your biophotons faster than anything else. I'm telling you, my friends, when you do something you've never done before, and you do it as aggressively as my first step process, you're going to crawl out of a rut you didn't even know. You're gonna flush out a cesspool you didn't know you had. You're gonna bump up your biophotons. You're gonna reset your whole feedback system. Remember, piece 5, we have a malfunctioning survival mechanism. We can't trust ourselves anymore. But that's why we have to do this. We have to test an idea as time has come so that we can do what Aristotle would say to do. Believe only your own experience. There's no fact like a fact learned from your own life. Right now we can't do that because we can't trust our own experiences. We have a malfunctioning survival mechanism. Remember, we build up a tolerance to our mistakes. We slide up 112. We get a 103 in limbo. Now, 103s are supposed to be in the negative C box. That's a problem. But they slide up and they're represented with a box around it. And this is how we're getting tricked. We're getting pleasure from making mistakes. We don't realize that what causes a symptom at 50 or 60 was due to what we had done every day of our lives 1,000 times a year. So it's time to get excited. It's time to test an idea as time has come. It's time to do the first of my three-step process, and you can access a 2-hour seminar I gave by clicking here. As I always say, when you guys do this, you guys are in for a treat.